Kevin, pronouns he, him, calling in from Moldy Anus, has a question about the idea that 1.7% of the population is intersex, and I think you're right. We're a great tag team for this one. Kevin, you're on AXP with Forrest and Ben. You're the last call of the day. How you doing?
I am doing really well, and you are right that you are the tag team. I've had this question for like a week and a half just floating around my head. I'm like, I would love to find a stream with Ben and Forrest on it to help answer this question, and I didn't think it was ever going to happen on the other network that I won't mention for reasons, but the fact that I happened to get in at the last as the last call, like, I could see why some people think coincidences are evidence for God. Because, like, this definitely feels, feels like kismet, as the previous caller might say. Anyways, but the correct interpretation of the Massachusetts anagram would be misidentified Archaeopteryx, because there have been fossils of theropod footprints found in Massachusetts, and because Archaeopteryx is part of the theropod clade, they could have been mistaken or misidentified as an Archaeopteryx. I wanted to real quick.
Hell yeah.
For the
here for it.
So I wanted to call in because I debate on Twitter a year, 2 years ago, whatever.
I don't recommend that.
People who are arguing that sex is binary. I know
the people you're talking about. I've been in that debate on Twitter this forever, but notably this past week. But yeah, so I know exactly the people that you were arguing with.
Yep, me too. Unfortunately, I've been there.
Yep.
Yeah. So every time people bring this up, I bring up kind of the statistic about roughly 1.7% of people being intersex, and the whole population. I usually use Japan or Mexico. I heard Forrest, I think last week or week before last, use Russia. Either way, doesn't really matter. It's still a pretty significant portion of the population on a global scale.
Over 130 million people.
Large, yeah, bigger than many large countries. The question I have, and the question that was brought up that I didn't really know how to respond to, is because according to the paper, How Sexually Dimorphic Are We by Blacklist et al., and I can give you references to that, although the easiest one is the title, because the DOI is a long string of like alphanumeric and special characters and weird stuff.
Right. There should be a PM ID, which is shorter if you want to give that, but I have the paper already. I've used it as a source for the new Sex and Sensibility video I'm working on.
Yeah, I was not able to find a PM ID. I don't know if this is even on PubMed. I could be wrong. I just haven't found it. Anyway, so the issue that some people seem to take with this is that of that 1.7%, 1.5% is attributed to late onset congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which is a condition
which
XX
does not matter.
That happens.
It doesn't change a thing.
It doesn't change anything. and the whole debate, and
part I'm trying to.
Yeah, and so the whole discussion ends up leading to the gender criticals. Essentially, like if you take them and back them into the corner, it will get them into having to admit that there are exceptions, and they will say that the exception does not make the rule. Therefore, we just ignore the exceptions. Well, as absolute garbage argument, as many of us would know. And one of my favorite pushbacks is to relate this percentage to thyroid diseases. I believe Graves' disease has like a 2% prevalence, so like a little bit higher than like all of the intersex conditions. If I said that, well, normal people have functioning thyroids, so I should just assume that anybody that comes to me has a normal thyroid, and it's so unlikely that they have Graves' disease that I just shouldn't even bother worrying about it. I should just assume they have a normal thyroid. Is that a good idea for me to do? And most people, like, if you really think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, a small percentage doesn't mean anything in that sense, because they still are humans and they still need to be cared for appropriately. And it, at the end of the day, doesn't matter outside of the context of their medical care. So it's just silly to think that, like, a small percentage negates those people in the population, but also that we should just treat those people as if their needs don't matter. It's wild to me. And yeah, like, I don't know if you've gotten to that point in the corner, or if there's another argument point that you wanted to ask about.
Yeah, I also want to point out that 1.7%, here I have that source from the UN. So, like, I'm not saying that the UN is right because they're the UN. This is from the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner here. This report on intersex people, which cites that 1.7 number, 1% number as well. I'm just saying that, like, maybe the people, the good people at the UN, might have read these studies as well and come up, and like maybe these random people on Twitter might not be the only source. But that's just me, you know. Also, the World Health Organization uses the same numbers, if I remember correctly. So again, the best doctors and scientists in the world are on one side of this issue, and some folks on Twitter are not, and that's just fine with me. And like, I think, Ben, you hit on something really important there. You're talking about, you know, like, just the goalpost always moves. It always moves. It is always, you're either XX or XY. And then we bring up, well, no, there's you know, Klinefelter syndrome, and there's Sawyer syndrome, and there's Turner syndrome, and there's all these different things. And it's like, well, no, because those, you know, all these chromosomal anomalies where you have XYY or XXY or XXX or all these those aren't real, or X0, you could have that. Those aren't. It's really XY is always male and XX is always female. Okay, well, there's Sawyer syndrome where you could have XY and still have a completely female phenotype. And there's actually case studies of women with Sawyer syndrome having XY chromosomes and giving birth to healthy children by their own bodies. And there's also De La Chapelle syndrome with, you know, you could have XX chromosomes still be completely developmentally phenotypically male. Well, yeah, but there's still the SRY. The SRY gene is what really is the thing. So some cases of De La Chapelle, you have either part or all of the SRY gene that translocates over. Sometimes not, though. You could have epistasis. You could have, because like there's not actually just one gene or just one chromosome. There's enough variation on the sex chromosomes alone to produce a wide variety, but the sex chromosomes are neither necessary nor sufficient by themselves to produce the sexed bodies that we have. That's just not true. And also, all sex characteristics and traits exist on a spectrum on themselves, because sex is a multivariate system with no single determining factor and no factor that has just two outcomes or two options. So like that doesn't work either. And then we get to, well, okay, fine, but because the chromosomes don't actually matter. What it really is genitalia. And it's like, okay, Guiva Doce people, like it literally means penis.
Yeah, and what they get to, my most favorite that they get to is they'll go to gametes, and they'll go to the large immobile gamete or the small mobile gamete, and then you bring up the example, which the case study, or at least one of the case studies that you mentioned, is one that I cite frequently, which was a case of chimerism, but with predominantly XY genotype with a functional SRY, who did carry a pregnancy to term, did not know she had that until her daughter was karyotyped and had the same condition. But they'll go to that and you'll point out, okay, so if someone does not have gametes, then what sex are they? And then here's what their new goalpost move is, but it's about the body that was organized around the gametes, which is funny because that goes straight back to the other characteristics that we previously debunked. So they're just going back in a circle now. And like,
don't even get me started on. I was gonna say, and the body is organized for these gametes, except for people with ovotestes, because ovotestes exist where you have ovarian tissue and testicular tissue in the same organ. But that's different.
And that's the one I brought up after that. And then they'll go from there and they'll say, well, every intersex condition is either a male or female intersex condition. And somebody even commented on I cited a case study of an example of ovotestes, and the person said that is a male DSD. And I was like, how do you get somebody who is completely 50-50? And you're going to, like, I went down the path of asking them, like, okay, what factor then assigned them to the male side?
Right.
Because no matter what, you have, if you're going to adhere to a binary, you have to have a factor that every time would assign you to one of the two options. Right. Otherwise, any other options, and you have an option that is not either of the two.
Right. It's what you want, a uterus? You could have persistent Mullerian duct syndrome and have a penis and a uterus. You could what do you want? You Givadoce people are born phenotypically female and develop a penis during puberty. The word Givadoce means penis at 12 because that's when you grow one all of a sudden. Like there's so many options and so many examples and so many ways this doesn't work. And when you combine all of these things, a population the size of Russia doesn't fit into two boxes. And so, like, dude, I think it's like, it reminds me, I think you and I, Ben, you and I did a show where somebody I called in was saying, no, really, it's binary. And we literally at one point showed a picture. Yeah, we showed a picture of a gradient from red to blue with purple in the middle. And we were like, what color is right here in the middle? Yeah. If this is binary. And he's like, yeah, well, it's actually red and blue at the same time. That means it's binary. And it's like, come on, man. Yeah.
And that's what they'll do. And that's what they'll do. It's just a circle of moving the goalposts.
Yep. It's wild. Anyway, we've been rambling because we deal with this all the time, Kevin. I'm sorry. But was there anything else specific you wanted to bring up or that you wanted to talk to us about?
This is why I wanted to call the both of you together, because I knew that you would have so much to say on this topic. And I'm a little bit sad that, like, it's at the end of the show and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is just this ridiculous idea that this one specific condition that makes up such a large portion of it, the argument that was given to me was like, because these people with late onset CAH, have a mass of adrenaline and other androgens flooding their system at a late stage in their life, does that make them not women? And I thought that was such a weird question to put out. And I just
it's very interesting, actually. It's very interesting. Because you can have acquired CAH, and so like you can have it hereditary, but if you have other ways to where you're impacting adrenal function, you can induce it through like if someone had certain toxicities that had caused the adrenal glands to not function as well, et cetera, things that would have caused that, or any diseases like tumors can you can cause that. So if you think about that, that is a fantastic argument for how your sex can change over time, and how actually, like, because my perspective, a lot of people will say that, like, we know that we can't change our sex. I disagree with that. You can change, because sex is multivariate. You can change the things that matter. And that is a way, if people are going to say that CAH is one of these different things, well, I mean, it is a way that your sex changes over time. If we're considering all these factors. So
I was about to say that
you can pin them.
That means sex isn't immutable.
Yeah. And so you can pin them into the corner with that and say, okay, so your sex can change. So then why are trans people not allowed to be that exception? Like if we allow for exceptions, why are trans people not allowed to be those exceptions too? So that's where my line of questioning usually goes. If it even gets there, usually they'll run around in circles and not even let you get to that point.
Anyway, Kevin, good luck on Twitter. Also, if I could give you any advice, get the fuck off Twitter.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, we can hear you. Yeah, your phone might have gotten asleep.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I wasn't sure if my mic went out. Sometimes it has issues. Anyways, I just wanted to say thank you. That was amazing. And honestly, it brought me to a place where I'm realizing not only is sex not binary, it's not even necessarily static. And like this idea that sex can change over time because, as Dr. Ben said, it's multivariate. It's not just one thing. It's 20 different things all smushed together into a thing that we've decided to place in a neat, tiny little box where it's actually this much bigger, much more complex thing, and it can change. And yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. This was the dream team for this question, and I really appreciate the fact that you guys go online and you do this and you answer these questions for people like me and people who are maybe less curious and more opinionated. Either way, I appreciate everything you do. Thank you so much. And people
Thank you.
who haven't donated to Doctors Without Borders, please do it. They're an amazing group.
Yes.
Just wanted to,
they are. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the recognition that we are not well.